Hello and welcome to the Tough Girl podcast, which is all about motivating and inspiring you. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. The Tough Girl podcast is sponsorship and ad-free thanks to the monthly financial support of patrons. To find out more about supporting your favourite podcast and becoming a patron, please check out www.patreon.com/Tough Girl podcast. There's over 230 patrons who are currently supporting the mission to help me increase the amount of female role models in the media. Take action now and become one of them. Today, I'm delighted we're going to be speaking to Dr. Favia Dubyk, climber, animal lover, physician, American Ninja warrior, surviving cancer one day at a time.
I'm Dr. Favia Dubyk. I live in New Mexico, in the U.S. I am a rock climber, photographer. I am married with 5 cats, 1 dog, and a foster dog.
Take us back to the start. Tell us a little bit more about growing up. Tell us about your childhood.
I was born in North Carolina, and I was raised by my single mom until I was 10. And we moved to Tennessee for her to go to grad school. And she met my stepdad, and we moved to Maryland, and that's where I did middle school and high school. And I mainly ran track through high school. I was a sprinter, 100 and 200, and the associated relays. And after graduating high school, I attended Harvard University up in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where I studied environmental science and public policy and also ran on the track team. And there I actually held the record for the 100-meter dash for several years and the 4x1 as well. After that, after college, I was pretty much done with running track. And I went to Columbia University to get my master's. And that's kind of where I stumbled upon rock climbing. I was at home visiting my mom and my stepdad right before I was started at Columbia, and I didn't have any friends at home. So I had been going to the movies like every day. I had literally seen like every film in the theater. There was nothing else for me to go to the theater to see. So I Googled things to do in Tennessee, and rock climbing came up. I went once and I loved it. So when I joined Columbia, they had a rock climbing club. So I immediately joined it. And I actually didn't like it my second time around. And so I actually didn't rock climb for a good 6-7 months. And I was moving on from Manhattan to start med school at Case Western in Ohio. And I said that I better get my money's worth from this membership. So I had to go 11 times to break even. But by time, 5 or 6, I was hooked. And that pretty much changed the course of the rest of my life.
Oh my God. Love it. How amazing is your mom? I mean...
also to add on, she was going to grad school to get her PhD as a single mom. So that made it even tougher.
What did she get her PhD in?
Neuroscience.
Oh my God. I'm so impressed.
Like speech science, neuroscience. But yeah, she was really tough. I mean, just a really tough lady. Really nice, though. It was a lot easier once my stepdad came into the picture. And then we had my sister was born after that. So we're a family of 4.
What a role model. I mean, I don't even know how she did that. Was she working as well while getting her PhD and raising you?
She was working before the PhD, but then she took time off work. She had her own business. Like she was doing speech therapy on her own. And then she stopped that to go to grad school. So she just raised me in the dorms at Vanderbilt University. We lived in dorms.
When you were growing up, did you always know that you wanted to be a doctor? Did you know that you wanted to go to Harvard? Was that sort of a path that you set for yourself?
Yes. When I was 5, I asked my mom what the best colleges in the world were. And she was like, oh, there's Harvard and Yale. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to one of those. And that kind of just stuck with me for my entire, grade school, middle school, high school career. And for being a doctor, I wanted to be a vet in elementary school and middle school, but I decided that it would just be a little bit too emotional. for me that I couldn't handle the ups and downs. So I kind of switched paths to go to med school. I like humans, but animals really, really touched my heart.
What was it like when you got accepted?
There was a lot of screaming and dancing in the driveway because, when you get the big envelope, you know what, you got accepted already. So as soon as we checked the mail, we were all just like dancing outside. It was pretty exciting. I was the first for my, family to go to Ivy League. So it was pretty big news for us.
That's awesome. What were those 3 years like? So you obviously got involved in track and doing the 100-meter dash and the 4x100, setting records. So they're involved in the sports side. What else was life like for you as a student there?
Well, my life was pretty much dominated by track because we had, many hours of practice every week, traveling on the weekends or even during the week to go to meets across the country. But I was also pre-med and doing environmental science and public policy, which was one of the tougher concentrations at Harvard. So I actually spent a lot of time in science labs. We had to kind of rearrange my track schedule where I would have to do some practices early in the morning so that I could do my labs in the evening because that's the only time labs were available. But outside of science and track, of course, I hung with my friends to go dancing. We love to go dancing, but I also did volunteer work. Probably my biggest group was Eye First Sight, where we gave eye tests and we did glass drives, like eyeglass drives, for people who couldn't afford to get glasses. And then I was also part of, different social groups like BSA, Black Student Association, and then there was a Black Student Association for people in the sciences. And I was also in juggling club where I learned how to juggle, walk on stilts, and do other fun tricks.
Let's move on to when you went to med school in Hawaii, into Ohio. So you obviously, you tried rock climbing previously when you were in Tennessee, but you didn't really like it. What made you try it again?
Well, I had by my few when I had to make myself go those few times, I started to like it. And then when I moved to Ohio, I didn't know anyone. And so I just went to the rock gym there because it's kind of an easy way to meet a group of people who have similar interests. But I really had no idea like really the extent of what rock climbing was. And so when I went there, they asked me questions like, have you ever been outside climbing? And I was like, what do you mean outside climbing? Who climbs outside? Do people add holds to like rocks and trees? Is that how it works? So it was really in Ohio where my climbing career really blossomed. That's where I learned that people climb actual rocks. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of rock climbing available in the state of Ohio. So I took my first outdoor climbing trip pretty much in West Virginia, and that was about 4 hours away. And once I did that, I really fell in love with outdoor bouldering. And I spent pretty much every weekend for the first 2 years either climbing in West Virginia or Kentucky. So like every Friday night, I was driving several hours to go climbing with my new climbing community in Ohio, and they were just so welcoming to take a new person outside and to show me how to climb safely and to have fun while climbing outside. I'm really grateful to the Cleveland Rock Gym for just welcomed me with such open arms. My first night in July of 2010 is pretty much when my real climbing career started.
So tell me more about what it was like climbing outside. I mean, did you have like a natural affinity for it? Or was it a case of really just repeating the same moves over and over again and just getting stronger and just getting more technical?
I had a natural affinity for the actual climbing part of it, but I did not have a natural affinity for the outside part of it. growing up, we didn't spend, like, I'd never gone really camping or, hiking or anything like that. We weren't really an outdoorsy family. So learning how to hike to the actual climbs was probably harder than climbing for me. Dealing with the bugs, the spiders, and the holes, like that was really terrifying. I'm actually still really terrified of bugs, and finding big spiders in your hold was just absolutely nuts for me. I was like, oh, I don't want to put my hands in a hold, but the movement and the climbing, that part came pretty easily for me. And I'm now, even though I've been climbing outside regularly for years, people still ask me, do you like know how to hike at all? Because my hiking skills are still pretty poor. But people have been, all my climbing partners have been really nice and let me walk, like they walk with me really slowly so I can get to the climbs.
Got you, got you. And what about your body in terms of injury or in terms of looking after it? Because obviously climbing, it's very physical. You're out there. There's a lot of stress and pressure. How many hours a week are you climbing nowadays?
Well, let's see. I kind of split my time between climbing and training for American Ninja Warrior, but those trainings are really kind of very similar. So I try to train about 6 days a week. And during the week after work, I probably train between 3 to 4 hours a day. And then on the weekends, it could be up to, if I'm on a climbing trip, it could be, 8, 10 hours of climbing in a day. Actually, I've done up to 12 hours of climbing.
Oh my God, absolutely fantastic. I mean, obviously, being a doctor, you know the body, you know the signs. What are your tips for recovery, really, and getting you back out there every single day so that you can carry on climbing?
So for me, I actually heal very slowly. Unfortunately, after going through chemotherapy, my body just doesn't recover as fast as it used to, and my immune system is super weak. So making sure that I don't get injured is really important because I don't bounce back like the normal person does. So for me to stay healthy, I I try to do a lot of rehab, or I guess people call it prehab, to make sure like you do some stretches, call it IYs and Ts with exercise bands for your rotator cuffs because you don't want to, as a climber, you don't want a rotator cuff injury. So I make sure I warm up my shoulders before I climb. To be honest, I actually have a really large care team for myself. I have, I think, three chiropractors, one acupuncturist, one massage therapist, one physical therapist. And so whenever I feel anything bugging me, I make sure to, go to see a professional to see if they can, diagnose what is happening and give me rehab exercises. I also am a big proponent of dry needling. And as an MD, I am licensed to do dry needling. And so I actually dry needle myself. Like I carry needles, and when I start feeling something achy, I just do some acupuncture and dry needling on myself, and that really that really helps. But if you're not a professional, don't do it on yourself, and go see someone.
Absolutely, go see someone else. Don't do it on yourself. I just wanted to go back to what you said about going through chemotherapy. Would you be able to share more about when you first got diagnosed with cancer?
Yes, I was just starting my third year of med school back in Ohio, and before I got the diagnosis, pretty much everything was going great. Like I was climbing really strong. I had just met this awesome guy who was like my boyfriend of a couple of months, and I was, moving on in my medical career. I couldn't ask for like life to be going any better. And then I started to feel kind of yucky with problems. First, it's kind of start with general like illnesses, like getting a cold here and there, like some sinus infections. But then it progressed to chest pain, difficulty breathing, and then it progressed to difficulty swallowing to the point where I couldn't really get liquids down or solids down. I had to sleep straight up because if I laid down, I would just couldn't breathe whatsoever. So I saw a series of doctors who misdiagnosed me for several months with many benign illnesses like asthma or things like that. But then finally, I found a doctor who would give me a scan, give me an x-ray, and they found a 13 centimeter mass in my chest. And that explained why I couldn't breathe, because this huge mass was sitting on my trachea and my lungs, and it wasn't allowing me to get any air in. And so I had to go to the hospital after that, where they did a biopsy where I just had pretty much every serious complication you can think of. Like my lungs collapsed, my heart was filled with fluid all around it. I had blood clots all in my upper extremities, and it was pretty much a real mess. And to top it off, the biopsy didn't even come back with any definitive results. So I ended up having to go through several biopsies, and I had to live in the hospital for a month before I could even get any treatment. And then finally, one of the biopsies came back as lymphoma, Hodgkin's lymphoma, advanced stage because of it was just so big. And then from there, I proceeded with 6 months of chemotherapy. And let me tell you, it's not like they portray it on TV. It's not like, oh, you vomit here and there, and then you just go on to live your normal life, going to work and stuff. I would get my chemo on Mondays, and I would just pass out on for the next 4 days, and then I would wake up sometime Thursday evening, and I would just feel horrible, just really, really nauseous, vomiting nonstop. And then by the next week, Thursday or so, I would start to kind of feel a little bit better. But then I would get chemo on Monday again, and it was the same cycle. So I was pretty much bedridden because I couldn't use my arms, because to get the biopsies, they had to cut both my pectoral muscles. I couldn't use one of my legs, so I couldn't walk because I had my port in my leg. And a port is a device that you receive your chemotherapy in. So there was definitely no going to school, no rock climbing. I was just stuck in bed, vomiting my brains out for 6 months. It actually got so bad that on some of those Thursday nights, I would just ask my husband to end my misery. Well, he was my boyfriend then, but married him later. I would say, just kill me now. I can't do this anymore. It's just too painful. Luckily, he didn't listen, and I'm here today.
Oh my goodness, I can't imagine going through that, especially when you said at the start, you're halfway through medical school, your medical career is going super well, you've got this great boyfriend, you're doing loads of rock climbing, life couldn't be any better, and then a 13 centimeter mass in your chest. That's just wow. I don't know if it makes it better or worse training to be a doctor, and understanding the medical jargon, knowing what is happening to your body, knowing what's happening when you're going in for biopsies. Did that help you or not really?
Oh, it saved my life without a doubt. I am allergic to some rare medications, and there were some. It's kind of rare, so the doctors didn't quite believe me, because doctors rotate, so you might not get the same doctor the day before. So the one doctor would see that I had a reaction, but then would forget to mark it in my chart, and then the next day, I'll have a new doctor, and they'd be like, "Oh, that's a really rare thing to be allergic to. I don't know if you're really allergic to it," and then they would try to give it to me. So I since I was in the medical field, I knew that what I was having were allergic reactions, not uncomfortableness or anything like that. So I made sure to check all the labels of the medicines they gave me every 4 hours. I was like, nope, can't take that. Nope, can't take that. Will not take that. So I was a little bit of a pain in the butt to some of the nurses, because I was just like, no, I'm not taking it. I'm allergic. I know it's not on my chart, but I will not take that. So I think definitely being in the medical field, I mean, I can't imagine living in the hospital. I don't know how people do it. Like, I would imagine like it'd be very confusing because they don't explain things too well. So I'm just really like grateful that I had the knowledge to be able to, stand up for myself and say like, no, don't give me that medicine, or that medicine doesn't make me feel good. Is there a different alternative? Or I even knew alternatives. So I said, please give me this medicine. So I was really lucky.
Yeah, and I was going to say, never ever say you were a pain in the butt. You are advocating for your life. And to be honest, sometimes there is this arrogance with doctors that they think they know best, whereas actually you know your body best. You're the one who understands how it works. And yes, you do obviously have that medical training. I suppose that's obviously changed the way that you doctor now because you spent so much time on the other side being a patient. What sort of doctoring do you do now?
So I'm a pathologist. So we are the doctors that make the diagnosis. So when someone comes in with a mass, the surgeon takes out a piece of it and gives it to us. And then we look at it under the microscope and we tell them if it's cancer, if it's infection, if it's some autoimmune disease. We also run the lab and the blood bank. And we're probably the most famous for doing autopsies.
Let's just carry on. So you've had the biopsies, you've had the surgeries, you've been diagnosed with cancer, Hodgkin's lymphoma, 6 months of your life taken over. Obviously, an incredibly difficult time period. How did you get through those 6 months?
Basically because my mom actually moved up to Ohio to take care of me for a few months. And then, so she was on the day shift. And then my boyfriend, now husband, was on the night shift. But then eventually she had to go back because she was a professor. She had to go back to work. And I was lucky enough to have fantastic friends in Ohio and friends from across the country who flew in, to take weeks to take care of me. Like they would alternate weeks. Like this is your week, this is my week. So I was just really lucky to have a great support system because a lot of my friends were in med school, so they were taking off time school to come, clean my vomit buckets.
Oh, God, that's getting me emotional. Like that's what you want, isn't it? You want friends who would do that for you. Absolutely amazing. So in terms of recovery and getting back into sport, getting back into climbing, how long did that take? Was that something that was important to you? Or is that sort of so far out of reach that you had to start somewhere else?
Well, it was really out of reach at first because I was bed bounce and I had lost a lot of weight. I was under 100 pounds. Um, so I was super, super skinny. I had no muscle, and I couldn't even open the fridge. Like I remember the day I was able to open the refrigerator by myself. Like that was how weak I was. That somebody else would have to get me something out of there. So pretty much after I finished chemo and I declined radiation because you're supposed to get radiation afterwards, but I thought the side effects of radiation were too high. So I took the chance of not completely or possibly not killing the whole cancer and a 25% chance of it coming back, instead of, doing radiation and having heart failure in my 30s. So after I made that big decision, and you have to get a scan about like a month after you finish chemo to make sure the cancer is gone. After that, I decided that it was time for me to get out of the house a bit because I was really really down. While I was sick and just in bed for those 6 months, I wasn't really thinking about how my life had changed. I was just trying to live minute for minute. Like, can I survive this minute? Oh, I survived that minute. Can I survive the next minute? And that was pretty much how I thought for 6 months. And then it hit me after I was done surviving and I was trying to live again, like how my life had been torn apart. And I got really, really down and I really, really wanted to hit something. So I with stitches still in my leg from my last surgery to remove my port, I hobbled into the Cleveland Boxing Club and I said, I want to learn how to fight. And they looked at me and they're like, okay, you're like in a pretty pathetic state here, but we'll train you. And so that's what I did for several months. I got personal training at the Cleveland Boxing Club, and they kind of got me back into shape a bit. I built back some muscle, and they were real supportive. And I'm really happy they didn't let me in the ring very often because I was actually on blood thinners and like I can't take a hit. Like I probably would have bled out if they hit me hard. So I'm glad they mainly just made me do like a lot of body weight training, sit ups, squats, things like that to get a good baseline. And after I guess it was 4 or 5 months of that, I decided that I would go back to the rock climbing gym. And that first time, I still remember my first time, it did not go nearly as well as I had hoped. Because in the boxing gym, I was able to, move my arms. But I didn't realize that in boxing, you're not really going overhead a lot. You're just going forward. And that I had no ability really to lift my arms up because of the surgeries. So I had to start by traversing with like my hands at my chest like a T-Rex. And I couldn't go up or down. I could only go left to right. And after about 15 minutes at the gym, I was too exhausted to stay, and I had to go. So that was actually a little devastating for me because I was trying to mentally recover from what happened, but physically my body was just really, really wrecked. But, I didn't let it get me down too much. And I just kept going to the gym multiple times a week. And probably after a couple of months of traversing, I was finally able to lift my arms like above my head. And I was able to climb my first V0. And I had never been so excited in my life to get up a V0. But that was a really big day in my climbing.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to take you back. I mean, obviously, a huge change and a huge challenge that you faced and overcome. Going through those 6-7 months where you're living minute by minute. I can't even imagine what that would be like. And you did say that you were sort of depressed, you were down, you got angry about it. How did you change your mental state? Because obviously you went to the boxing gym and you got angry and you started working out, which is fantastic for your physical body. Did you find that helped you mentally as well, or was there anything else that you were doing for your mind?
I basically worked out the mental sadness that I had through working out. I had been an athlete my whole life. And so my kind of whole like reason for being had been to work out. So, and actually when I was sick, I kind of had to figure out a reason to continue. Like I needed a very, very concrete reason to not give up. And I decided that reason was to get back to climbing. So since I made that was my major goal, and I kind of like goals. I like to do lists so you can check things off. So me being able to go back to climbing kind of made me feel like myself again, even though I wasn't climbing the way I used to. I didn't look the way I used to. But just going back to the climbing gym made me mentally feel better. And that was a very slow process, like not like a month process of feeling mentally better, but a many year process where, I mean, I wouldn't even say that now, almost 6 years done, that I am back to like 100%. But, every month it got a little bit easier to wake up in the morning. And that's why, like, to this day, no matter how hard work gets, because residency is pretty demanding, I never stop climbing because like that is still my reason for living. As some people might think that might sound silly, but that is why I like get out of bed, is so that I can go to the gym. So that's pretty much how I got back to feeling mentally healthy again, was working out, and every day I felt a teeny weensy bit more like myself.
Yeah. Do you know, I think that's incredibly powerful. I think all too easy, people can almost expect it to be, there's a certain amount of time that passes and then you automatically feel better, you feel stronger. But sometimes it can take days, weeks, months, years even. But progress is being made every day. But sometimes that progress is just so small you don't even realize it. I think the thing that really inspired me from what you're talking about is getting back to the climbing gym. And sometimes you said previously you'd be climbing for like 12 hours at weekends, and training, all the training that you were doing, and then now you're doing traverses left to right, and you could manage 15 minutes and then you're done. But I think the key thing is that you went and did it. So it's it just adds up and it builds up over time, and climbing that VO the first time and getting to the top, and that's a huge milestone, which is incredible. Tell me about the American Ninja Warrior. How did that come about?
Well, I was in my second year of residency here in New Mexico, and I was in a pretty stressful month of work. I was studying for a board exam, and I was on a rough rotation. And I get this message through Instagram from a Ninja Warrior like ambassador, and they said like, "Hey, like we think you'd be great for the show. Will you apply?" And I was like, "Oh my goodness! Like I've never done Ninja Warrior type stuff, and I have to take boards in like a week, but your application is due in a week." I was like, "I don't know, this might be too much," but I decided, I said, no, I'll give it a try. Why not? So I submitted the submission video, and I immediately joined a ninja gym. And luckily, Albuquerque here, we currently have 3 ninja gyms. So there's no shortage of obstacles for me to train on. And I trained for a couple of months before I had to compete. And let me tell you, I was not a natural. Every a part of it like terrifies me. If you watch the episode, you'll see that I'm screaming a lot. It's not really because I have some primal force. It's just because I was terrified out of my mind. And unfortunately, right before I had to compete, like the days before, I developed a kidney infection. And so, like, right before I had to fly to Dallas, I was in the hospital, and I was like, guys, I got a kidney infection. I need IV ceftriaxone and then some PO augmentin for when I get on the flight in 5 hours today. Can you finish the infusion in 4 hours so I can get to the airport and make my flight? And luckily, the hospital here, they were able to give me my infusion, and that perked me up enough to compete on the show this past year. I'm hoping I submit it again this year. I hope they choose me again, and I hope to not be in the hospital the day before I have to do an obstacle course.
Well, how did it go for you?
Well, my main goal was to get through the first obstacle, which I did. So I was really proud of that. And I managed to get through the second obstacle, but at the end of the second obstacle, when you have to move on to the cargo net, I just face planted the cargo net and slid down, couldn't get a hold of it, and hit the water.
Oh my goodness! But you did it though, and you're going to be applying again, which is incredible.
Yes.
And it looks like a super fun show. You're climbing, you're training, you're studying for boards. I've watched Grey's Anatomy, so I feel as though I can relate. But I mean, balancing study, balancing medical school, rotations, doing your boards, training, recovering from cancer. That is a lot of stuff you have going on in your life. How do you balance it? How do you figure it all out?
Well, I'm really thankful for being on the track team in college, because I had to learn then really how to schedule your time and how to balance and how to be efficient. So, because there, I was doing pre-med and running so many hours, I just couldn't, just waste time. And so I learned how to schedule then, and I have carried that ability to schedule to like all through residency. So I'm not all that spontaneous. I live by a schedule. I make sure I try to finish my work by a certain time, and I make sure that I'm at the gym by a certain time, and that I try to make my workouts as efficient as possible. Like instead of doing planks for 2 minutes, I try to do planks in the rings for a minute with like a weight on my back. So that way I can do like my abs in half the time, but they're harder. And that's pretty much how I go about life. I just schedule in my fun times. Because I do have some fun outside of work and training. Like my husband and I, we go on hikes with the dogs, or we actually like walk the cat sometimes. But I think it's just definitely being efficient and knowing when to say no. Like I can't go out to eat with friends and go training and study and go to work. So sometimes you have to say no to some fun things. But that's okay because I'm pretty focused on becoming the best climber that I can be. And so I find training fun. So that's kind of where I try to put a lot of my time when I'm not at work. Because work definitely takes up a lot of time. And I have a great husband who works out with me, so we get a lot of our time. Like our dates on the weekdays are like training dates. Like let's go to the gym together. Let's go do pull-ups together. So we get fit together, and that works really well for our marriage.
Yeah, I mean, do you do? I'm really interested in this. Do you do to-do lists? Do you have like a paper diary? Do you have an electronic diary? How do you actually schedule? How do you manage your time? How do you become so efficient?
Well, I have I use a Google Calendar for like appointments because I still have to see usually multiple doctors every week to keep functioning. So to keep those appointments straight, I definitely use like a regular calendar. But the rest is just I keep a mental schedule. Like I know exactly how long it takes me to get ready in the morning. I know exactly how long that I'm going to walk the dogs in the morning. And so I set my alarm, I wake up, I don't hit the snooze button, I get up at that time, and then I start my day, and I use that allotted time. Like I don't have too much room to play, so like I always hope like my car better start because I did not schedule that into my day. And so yeah, I kind of just schedule dinner time, training time, and I follow a training plan through Training Beta. And so they kind of give you, so I can see what my training workout is going to be, and I can see how many hours that's going to take. And so then I can kind of schedule like, oh, I have to make sure I'm done with work at this time. Or sometimes I actually have to leave work, go to the gym, do my workout, and then go back to work to finish all the stuff I have to do that day. But yeah, I think it's mainly just like a mental to-do list that I keep. But it's also really knowing yourself really well. And I wear 2 watches. So I am pretty much always aware of the time.
What time do you get up in the morning?
I don't get up that early. Ever since chemo, I have to pretty much get 9 hours of sleep every night, or else I feel really crappy and I'll get sick. So I have to be at work by 8 usually. So I wake up around between 7 or 7:10. And I have gotten it down that I take care of the cats in 10 minutes. I walk the dogs for 20 minutes, and then I allow myself 15 minutes to get ready, and then I like eat breakfast at work, or I drink like a protein shake so that I'm at work by 8. And I live close to work, so I don't have a long commute. And then I get out of work, and then I eat a quick dinner, and I walk the dogs, and I go back to the gym. And if I do have to study for boards, I make sure to bring my study equipment to the gym, because if you can do pull-ups and V-ups while reciting, the human anatomy, that human anatomy really, really well. So I like to mix my training and my studying. You don't have to do one or the other. You can definitely do them both.
Oh God, you're just so inspirational. I love this so much. This is amazing. Favia, what advice and tips would you have for other women? There's almost 2 areas I want to get advice from you, really. Advice for women who want to get into climbing, and then advice for women who are going through a challenging time, whether that's cancer or another diagnosis, and they're in the recovery mode, but it's obviously still incredibly tough. So yeah, advice and tips for women who want to get into climbing. Go.
So for all you ladies out there who want to start climbing, I say just go to the climbing gym, like buy a membership that first time, and like buy a month membership, buy yourself some shoes because the rental shoes are no good and you're going to slip off the holds, and just go several times a week. Don't be shy. The climbing community is really welcoming, and it's really a no judgment zone. Like we'll all know like you're a beginner, and don't be afraid to ask questions. People are usually just more than happy to help, to give advice on technique. And because everybody has started at ground zero, we all remember what it's like to be new at this sport. So don't be afraid to just ask a question like, how does this route work? Where do you start? How do you reach that hold? I think asking questions and making friends with climbers who are a little bit more experienced than you will definitely help you get technique faster, and then you'll be climbing those grades in no time.
Awesome. And then advice and tips for women who are going through a tough time at the moment, whether that is recovering from cancer or recovering from injury.
I say just take it slowly, day by day. Don't expect to be where you were, or even for life to be the way it was before whatever large change happened in your life. And that's actually pretty tough to accept. Like, you used to be able to do this and now you can't. So just take all the small wins you can do. Like, don't set huge goals for yourself. Say like, oh, I'm recovering today. Like, I want to walk out to the front porch and just go to the front porch and take in some air and then go back inside and be like, yes, like today, like I made it to the porch. And then like the next day, like, oh, I want to go to the driveway. And just celebrate that day you were able to go to the driveway. And then if you keep making like very, very small goals, and even if you don't achieve your goal the next day, but just keep that goal and keep trying for that goal, then if you keep working hard, you should be able to achieve that small goal and then make another small goal. And then just keep making those goals until you're wherever you want to be.
Absolutely. Favia, amazing words of advice. And where's the best place for people to follow along with you on social media? Do you want to share more details about your blog and your website?
Oh, yes. So on social media, I'm most active on Instagram. My handle is Feline Favia, because I like cats. And I have a website called traversegirl.com. And this is a site for rock climbers out there who either are climbing by themselves outside or don't like to climb high. Personally, like climbing 30, 40 feet without a rope is kind of scary for me. And so I really seek out low balls. And on my website, I have made guidebooks for different areas that have good traverses and low balls for climbers who don't want to climb high or want to be safe when they're climbing by themselves.
Fantastic. I was going to say, and you do this as well as your rock climbing and boards and study and being a doctor. It's absolutely incredible. But it's a great website. There's lots of guides and resources. And what I'll do is make sure I put all of the links to your blog and to your Instagram account on the show notes, which will be available at toughgirlchallenges.com, so that everyone can find them, go and follow you and read your blog post and be inspired by you and what you're doing. Thank you so much for coming on the Tough Girl podcast to share more of your journey and your story. It's been incredible to speak to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it so much.
Tribe, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Dr. Favia. What an absolute inspiration. As I said before, all of the information and links that Favia talked about will be available at toughgirlchallenges.com. So please do go check out the website, especially if you are new to the podcast. There's over 180 episodes of the podcast. We've been going since August 2015. New episodes come out every week, Tuesday, 7 a.m. UK time. As I mentioned at the start, the podcast episodes are free for you to listen to, and I love the fact that you're listening. But if you can support in any way, I really would appreciate it. I've reached out to patrons to ask them why they supported. So let's hear from Mike about why he decided to support the Tough Girl podcast.
My name's Mike, and I've been a patron since April 2017. And what I love about the podcast is hearing stories about people who have overcome mental and physical challenges in order to do the things they want to do. Having some of those challenges myself, sometimes I can work through them, sometimes they defeat me, and it's encouraging to hear stories of people who have similar experiences and are able to persevere. I also enjoy hiking and motorcycling, and there are several interviews that Sarah has done with folks who have actually gone hiking or motorcycling in interesting places, and I really enjoy hearing those stories. I could have chosen to listen to the podcast for free, but I became a patron because there's an important underlying theme in everything that Sarah does. Tough Girl Challenges is about encouraging women to look out into the world, find things that interest them, and then go do them. I feel very strongly that if a person has the aptitude and interest to do a thing, then they should have every opportunity to pursue that thing, regardless of gender. I hope this message might encourage y'all to head over to Patreon and consider supporting Sarah's cause. She has a lot of awesome ideas, but they all take money, and we could be a part of that. So thanks for supporting Tough Girl Challenges, and thank you for listening.
A massive thank you to Mike for taking the time out to record that and share why he supports the Tough Girl podcast. I really do appreciate it. If you want to support the mission, if you want to help me increase the amount of female role models, if you want to see more women out there doing these awesome challenges, then sign up as a Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl podcast. $2 a month would make such an incredible difference. And if you sign up at that level, you will get your name on a dedicated page on my website, a dedicated patrons page where your name will go up there with the other 230 odd supporters, and it will help make such a massive difference. We've now passed over 700,000 downloads, which is incredible. 700,000 people have been inspired, which is awesome. I'm obviously going after 800,000, but secretly I want to hit the 1 million mark. That's where I want to take the podcast. So be a part of the mission, become a patron, get behind me, support me. If you love the podcast, then please take 2 minutes to sign up at $2 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month, whatever it is that you can afford. Have an awesome day wherever you are, and I'll be back with you next Tuesday for another awesome episode of the Tough Girl podcast. We've also got another bonus episode, which is going to be coming out when we are going to be catching up with Jenny Tough. That's going to be coming out on the 21st of February. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Take care, lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.